Okay. A very good evening to all the members who have registered for the session. Myself, CA Rekha Umashik, Regional Council Member SIRC, and the Chairperson of the Digital Accounting and Assurance Committee. I take immense pleasure in welcoming you all for the session. Yesterday, we had the first session on must-have series for the sessions for chartered accountants, which was cloud computing and digital transformation. So as I had mentioned yesterday, we had been conducting a series of workshops, especially on Tally and Power BI. And also we had some physical sessions on very chosen topics, including Web3, digital transformation, data analytics, data security, and digitization of internal audit. So this is a second session on that particular series of virtual sessions, which is working anytime from anywhere. So if you have seen post the pandemic, especially after the pandemic, this particular topic has gained a lot of prominence, especially once the employers and the employees have started realizing the tangible benefits of remote working. And especially with respect to employers, they have finally understood the economies of remote work, whether it be with respect to increase in productivity or with respect to health, or whether it's with respect to retaining the workforce, lesser absenteeism. So the benefits are numerous. So today we have a very eminent personality who is going to facilitate this particular session. So I take immense privilege in welcoming you, sir. Sir Arjun Pratap, sir, is a Deloitte partner with Deloitte and is a chartered accountant with more than 15 years of experience in related services with primary focus on control assurance, forensic, fraud, risk management, and internal audits. Arjun sir is also a certified fraud examiner and a certified information system auditor. And his significant experience spans in technology advisory services, third-party assurance, IT risk assessments, internal audits, process reviews and investigations, ERP reviews, business continuity assessments, vendor risk management reviews, post-merger integration, advisory and internal control assessments. And he has also aided clients, both regional industry leaders as well as the global companies, in design and implementation of internal control systems, process definition and improvements. And the industries where he has experience includes banking, financial services, technology, industrial products, retail, infrastructure, construction, and the list goes on. And sir is a speaker at various industry and professional forums and a very active member of ISACA and Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. And he has spoken on various topics ranging from digital risk management, blockchain, emerging technologies, future of work, future of audit, analytics, risk-based internal audits, cyber security, cyber frauds, and related security at various forums. So I think we will not have a better speaker for the day. Once again, a very warm welcome to you, sir. The session is all yours.
Thank you very much, Rekha, and thank you, SIRC, for giving me this platform to converse with each one of you. Welcome all members, and it is a great pleasure to talk with you today. So I would like to have this, a little bit more interactive. Rekha, I do not know if the audience will have a talking line also, or will the questions do come in as a Q&A format?
Madan sir, is it possible for proper interaction between the audience and the faculty? Can we have that?
Yeah, or if it is Q&A, that is fine. I just want to understand the way it is so that I can
we can allow the user to speak, madam. No problem.
Okay.
Raise the hand.
Yeah, when required, I think we can get on board. And,
yes.
Yeah, I hope you're able to see my screen. Right. So thank you very much. And I think this is one topic, that has been the hot topic for the last few years, since the pandemic has kicked in. While the pandemic has accelerated the way we look at, working from anywhere, there's a lot of mindset change that is also that we've undergone from, why do we need, work from home or work from anywhere to why don't we, require a work from home or work from anywhere, and how does it impact the way we work, the businesses that we, consult with, or the businesses that we audit. And overall, how does it, improve productivity? What are the other challenges and risks that are, ingrained within this change in focus that we have? So today, over the next couple of hours, what we will be looking at is because the pandemic has accelerated, we will just take a quick stab at how companies, organizations, economies have responded to the pandemic as we are today, from what we had seen in early 2020 to where we are today, and how these scenarios have changed globally as well. And from there on, we will move into specific areas, into the key challenges and risks that we will face in this work from home or work from anywhere scenario. The overall, as I talked about, the overall mindset that the mindset change, both from an employer point of view, from an employee point of view, from a customer point of view. So how is this mindset changing? What are the advantages, disadvantages, and then how do we given the fact that this is something that's going to stay on, and what was earlier called as new normal, today it is the normal. And given that this is going to stay on, how do we overcome some of the leadership challenges as practicing members or employers in conducting efficient business? And eventually, in terms of key business recoveries, what are the strategies that organizations have adopted? What is it that as members we will have to look at or focus or emphasize on? And finally, what the future of workplace is really going to look like. And this is what we would like to cover in the next 45 to 60 minutes of my talk. Any questions anybody has, you might raise your hand. You can put in a Q&A in the chat box that you have. I will be happy to stop somewhere and then give you a response to that. So with that, as I had mentioned, a quick look at how organizations, economies, institutions have actually faced this particular pandemic, and what we saw a couple of years ago, and the way things have evolved, and then how certain economies, like say for example, we believe that with this stringent COVID restrictions strategy, China did manage it pretty well. But then suddenly, in the last few months, we did see that there was a terrible lockdown impact that had happened, that we had seen both from a psychological point of view as well as even from a healthcare point of view. That suddenly burgeoned the number of cases in China, and therefore another critical round of disruption that had followed. But overall, we would like to bucket it in these four categories, where if companies had, or organizations and geographies had prepared themselves pretty well, then this is just a passing storm. Again, today, having looked at this over the last, I would say, 24 months, this is no passing storm for anybody in the world today. While initially we believed there are geographies like New Zealand, South Korea, which we believed did manage it eventually well, but with more and more mutants coming in, with more and more changes in the phases or the waves that had come in, and everybody had to go through this particular phase, and therefore a good amount of disruption. Many of the organizations, many of the geographies stayed within the good company category, where there was the learning. Even India did have a good amount of learning in wave 2, and therefore what the initial effective management in wave 1, and therefore the learnings from wave 2, we did understand how to kind of cope up with this, and then therefore moved into phased release of lockdown, and accordingly businesses were given priority, economy was given priority. At the same time, healthcare was never taken for granted, right? So that way, across many geographies, it was more in the second category, or the good company stage. And then sunrise in the east was what people looked at initially, with China managing it well, with South Korea, with certain Asia Pacific countries managing it well, with a strict a more militarized way of lockdown. But again, over time, that had also, because of the longevity of these procedures, some of these aspects did not turn out to be in a good practice to follow on. And then there were lone warriors, who did not prepare well, lone wolves, who geographies or economies who did not have adequate, healthcare support, who did not have adequate, supply chain related support, economic support, and they were the ones who did have the biggest or the greatest fall. Large economies, some of them also went into this category for a certain period of time, But again, because of the resilience that they could pull up, they were all able to come back. So essentially, if you would break it down, from a society point of view, the amount of psychological stress, the amount of the phobia that was attached with COVID, at least in India today, we could fairly say that we have largely come out of it with the amount of the increase in public gathering and travel all resuming almost back to normal. So that kind of a shift or a change has happened, and with even newer variants or versions coming through, I think we are in a better position to understand and manage these. Right. And technology is, I would say, the biggest benefactor of this particular phase of pandemic. Many organizations who had technology transformation ideas in mind were able to accelerate and push it forward because of the pandemic. And therefore, be it any category of the organization or any category where a company or a geography would fall in, be it the passing storm or lone wolf, today technology adoption has significantly and exponentially increased. And that's the significant benefactor as we would see, and which will continue to be also. While there could be negative news that will come in the sense of recession being setting in, and therefore most of the tech companies laying off people, but largely I think this will not still stop the technology adoption or the change or migration to more and more tech related business conduct between organizations, and India is one example with more and more digitization and digital transactions happening around. And economy, again, there were phases where there was almost a standstill in economic growth to a sudden boom, because things have opened up, and therefore everybody was able to release their stock, and the consumption went up, and therefore inflation also did go up, and therefore it's in a peak state versus a drop state. But again, there is always a global economy versus Indian economy debate that will go on. But having said that, there was a significant impact that the pandemic has had in certain businesses that could never go outside of the physical domain that it was operating in, and which still continue to look at losses or look at loss of business, right? And I think those are the businesses that have learned certain ways of adoption, or certain ways of even discussing with key stakeholders or regulators in kind of putting across a strategy if something like this comes up again. What do they do in such scenarios so that the business doesn't get impacted? Environment, again, environment and climate change was one of the key goals prior to 2020. Pandemic did slow down a bit, with and also pandemic helped supporting the environment or the climate change related goals, with travel almost coming to a very marginal point of 0 or 1% of what it was before. But again, with almost every country opening up and resuming back to normal, this again has become a topic for recognition, and the reason why ESG is today in everybody's mind. Again, something which is picked up. Politics, again, there are a lot of geopolitical issues that have shaped up, owing to pandemic. There were supply chain issues, and therefore some kind of decoupling from some of the dependent countries like China or certain other countries where strict lockdowns were impacting the supply chain, and how India was able to gain traction from over there is also some learning that we have looked at. Just a quick snapshot in terms of how pandemic had significantly made things very chaotic, but at the same time helped understand certain core areas that we cannot neglect, and at the same time certain strategies or protective or preventive measures that we could take. With this, we will quickly move into our key topic in terms of work from home or work from anywhere, which the pandemic has, I would say, significantly boosted. For many practicing members, this would have been a nightmare to quickly shift from what is largely a physical activity on auditing of physical businesses to something which is remote, because the businesses weren't ready in the initial stages, right? And how do we take certain amount of assurance or reliance in believing something which is, which we're not going there physically and then looking at. But how has these things shaped and changed up over the next, 20 to 24 months since 2020? I'll just ask a quick, put up a quick poll question out here. You can respond in your chat box or in your Q&A box, so that let us see, the mix of audience that we have today. The first question out here is your organization technologically equipped to move to work from home or work from anywhere? It should be, was your organization technology equipped? I would like to, see some responses on the chat box. As I mentioned, let us keep it a little bit more interactive in multiple modes and medium, so that we have good examples and good scenarios to discuss about also. Okay, I do see one response coming through. Okay, 3 responses so far. Another 15 seconds. Participants request you to please. Yeah, Mr. Parameshwaran has raised his hand. Maybe the operator can open up the lines for the participants who have raised their hands. We can make a quick intervention out here. Okay, one person has mentioned no. Some of them have mentioned, many of them have mentioned not fully, which fairly is the case. And few of you have mentioned yes as well. Operator, I think a couple of participants have raised their hands. If you can allow them to share their views. I think I can do it. Yeah, Mr. Lakshman Balaji. I think I have enabled you an access to talk.
Madan sir, is the chat disabled for the participants? Few are having some difficulty in replying, I guess.
So I will enable, madam. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Mr. Lakshman Balaji, I think you have raised your hand. I have just unmuted you. And Mr. Parameshwaran as well. Mr. Parameshwaran, were you wanting to say something?
Same thing, the chat is, chat box is disabled.
No, okay, I get it. Got it. Yeah, the operator is getting it done. Okay, we'll quickly move to the next question. Do you consider your organization to have sufficiently implemented best practices across technology and cyber risks? Well, this is one of the key considerations that we will look at from a work from anywhere or a work from home scenario. But during the pandemic and where we are now, do you think that your organization has sufficiently implemented and addressed some of the key concerns around technology and cyber risks? Again, an answer on the chat box or the Q&A tab will help. So there is a second poll question out here. Okay. On the way is a convenient answer. You may need to put across. Okay, I'll put up the final question also. If you are a member in practice, it could be for your own question. So there's one third question as well I had put across. I think you can type in your answers in the Q&A chat box. Okay, COVID-19 for many of you. So a quick look back at what are some of the key human resources challenges that we did. I think the first thing any employer was zoomed with was that many of the employees were underutilized, either because there was no technology support. Many organizations, many of us did not have employees who were working on the laptop before, largely with desktops or who had certain field jobs, and there was a significant issue in terms of how do you quickly get them a laptop or a device in place, or where you can allow them to use their own device so as to perform the job. I think this was one of the first and the most significant challenge that were there, and which actually pushed many companies to invest significantly in technology. Also, what was believed as a 2-week lockdown initially, or a 3-week lockdown, kept extending, and therefore they were what was looking as only a quick passing storm looked like there is a good amount of uncertainty in the way things were panning out, and therefore organizations and therefore the entire business community started feeling a little bit of discomfort, because staff were held up elsewhere. There were healthcare issues, and many organizations were not prepared to kind of handle such kind of situation. And finally, and also one other important thing was like, okay, you have enabled technology, you have provided employees with laptops. The clients are ready to today work remotely to provide information and to work together. There are technology tools that have been enabled, but how do you manage them remotely, right? Because even today, the biggest dilemma in any manager is like, how do I know that my employee is working only for me, right? And this has over the last couple of years has also put across new terms like moonlighting and other related frauds that have come through, where the trust factor has become the most questionable aspect with regards to work from home or a work from anywhere situation, and what kind of mindset change is required is something that we will look at subsequently. And as we had looked at in the second question, the other and the most important challenge was like when a significant amount of users, who were not technology enabled have suddenly become technology enabled, or to a certain extent, significantly were asked to use technology to perform their jobs, did not go through or undergo any of the information security related awareness programs, or the systems themselves were not ready to prevent or protect against any cyber attacks, and therefore that was a fertile ground for cyber hackers and other antisocial professionals to kind of get in and then steal data or use information, private information, ransomware attacks, malware attacks, and they were significantly going up. And this also a significant amount of increase because of mobile usage per se, because a lot of people started using mobile for their mobile is today again a computer for their official work, or students started using for their learning related activities, which largely were not protected. There was no container or there was no mobile device management that organizations installed initially, and therefore the attack vector or the threat area significantly increased, encouraging a lot of hackers to hack significant amount of data. And most importantly, when organizations moved from a desktop scenario to a laptop scenario where a significant number of users had to be provided laptop, these laptops were directly shipped from the vendor directly to the employees' residences, and in many cases they were not adequately configured for your organization security policies, and then therefore a lot of vulnerabilities got picked up from over there. And these are some of the basic or fundamental issues or challenges that both from a manpower point of view as well as from a info security point of view that posed across for organizations. And over the last 20-24 months, people have started to work around and then build protective controls around these areas to make it a more a robust way of working when you work remotely. A quick look at some of the risks today that organizations face, even as you as auditors or consultants work with organizations. The first and the foremost is that with cloud technology coming in and with more and more outsourcing coming in, the contracts that they have with outsourced service providers and the risks, the extended risk of their own organization that is today extending to the outsourced service provider, and how ready is the outsourced service provider to manage your organization's risks has become a key area to look at, right? Because if there is a failure at the outsourced service providers end, it will still have a significant impact on the processes and controls that you have intended to establish. And this was one of the first and the foremost issue, because whenever an outsourcing policy was framed, there was always a business continuity policy. But with a global pandemic setting in and multiple facilities and geographies and locations being coming under strict lockdown, in many cases the BCP targets will not be able to achieve, right? And that's one primary reason why companies started rethinking some of their outsourcing policies. What are the additional resilience related measures that they need to look at? How do they manage crisis? So today, if you look at crisis management for an organization, it largely extends also to the ecosystem around the organization, the businesses around the organization that support the organization, be it from a technology point of view, or be it from a business process point of view, or be it from a strategic governance point of view. If the outsourcing service providers contracts are not looked at from this point of view, then there is going to be a significant risk that will still continue to exist for every organization. And the other aspect that we looked at is the key person dependency or the super user access, because many organizations did not have adequate succession or contingency plans, and therefore a lot of people, in order to process a particular transaction or to execute a particular business during this pandemic time, have been provided with additional access, right? And more so if they are operating remotely, you do not know whether the access is being used for the purpose or for the intended objective that they have been provided for, and that posed a significant risk in the way these critical access have been provided for. And how quickly, and this is another aspect, resilience and remote working is another aspect or area that we initially discussed also. how ready or how quickly can an organization move from an on-premise way of working to a remote way of working. Today, over the last 24 months, I think many of us have learned it the hard way to kind of, even though with certain amount of business disruptions, have learned to kind of put across, a policy or a procedure in place to have this happen. But when the crisis kicked in, when the pandemic kicked in, how many organizations were ready? And with remote working facilities, being choked in, there were a lot of, bandwidth related issues that employees started complaining of. There were a lot of, the technology vendors, the hardware vendors were not able to supply a sudden spike or a huge increase in the amount of laptop requirements primarily, and then desktop requirements again, because many employees were shipped desktops from their offices back to the couriers or the logistics professionals. The entire logistics system got overwhelmed because everything was through home delivery at that point in time, be it grocery or be it a technology delivery. Everything was through home delivery mode, and therefore the supply chain was significantly got strained, and therefore many companies, even though they planned and they had adequate equipment to ship, they did not have the right amount of time to ship it so that work can go on without any disruption. Again, change management. Many of the processes with sudden change in way of working, with certain levels not operating at that particular time, there was a change in the process, or there was a change in the way the workflow approvals had been set up. And many users have been given certain additional approvals. And how have they been monitored? How are they even trained to execute such transactions had come into question, right? And therefore, change management is another significant area that an auditor or consultant will have to look into tomorrow when there is a sudden shift in the way people have started working. And even today, when we are talking about hybrid way of working, how do we actually execute it so that efficiently execute it so that we encounter a seamless way of transaction processing? People working in office, people working remotely, but all interconnected, but at the same time without any information security leakage or cyber security threat. How are these managed, and communication just on time or real time? How are transactions processed without any hindrance or without any challenges? And finally, and most important, is the way risk management will have to be looked at, because the risk management, the function itself will have to look at new risks that will come through, be it a facility risk or an employee absconding or manpower related risks that you will have to look at, customer confidentiality related risks. So there are newer risks that throw up when you suddenly move from a work from office or to a work from anywhere situation. And a work from anywhere situation is even more riskier, because even at least from a work from home point of view, you know where the employee is stationed. A work from anywhere situation, a lot of employees are remote. A lot of them will do today what is called as workation. They can be in a resort working, they can be in a beach resort or a hill resort working for you, but you do not know what are the other information security related threats or even business execution related threats that you will entail to. So what kind of policy as an organization that you would have will actually really mean the way you look at risk tomorrow. A quick practical example in the way some of the challenges had come through when suddenly people moved from a physical setup to a Zoom or a Teams setup. Zoom bombing at one point in time became an issue because there were a lot of security lapses in the Zoom app itself, and and then Zoom had to come in with a lot of additional security measures, as you are seeing out here, to kind of quickly face through this particular issue. Similarly, we had just recently we had an Office 365 going down with many companies having intermittent disruptions on MS Teams or any other MS Office product, and that in itself also bringing down a good amount of collaboration that people are having remotely. Right. Some key considerations, that as auditors that you would want to take a relook at when you're doing risk assessment. what needs to be looked at with a higher level of emphasis is the fraud risk that might arise through, again, from a manpower point of view. There could be moonlighting, there could be employee productivity related issues where employees will stay online, but then you will not get the output, which again will be a complaint today that many of the managers would come out with. But how do you largely manage this? What kind of policy upgrades or procedures that the organization put across when you have this shift from work from office to work from anywhere? Again, work from anywhere is again a larger issue to deal with as against a work from home, because again in a work from home scenario you at least know where the employee is working from. In a work from anywhere scenario, it could be a public railway station or a bus station from where the employee might work, because he might not come on a video, or there'll be work happening, but you do not know from where the work is really happening, right? And therefore adequate policies and procedures to address each of these risks will have to be considered and factored in the way both from an infosec point of view, from a human resource management point of view, and as well as from a business process point of view. And the other key consideration that needs to be looked at is the modification or termination of certain contracts and SLAs with your outsourced vendors, with the organization's outsourced vendors, and what kind of resilience measures that they will have. If your BCP process is going to undergo a change because of this change in way you're working, then the same, to a certain extent, will also have to apply to the outsourced vendors, and how that is being affected is something which is very, very important. Say, for example, if you are signing up for an MS Teams program, so what is the acceptable level of downtime? Because if significant amount of work of your teams, of your workforce is being carried out of MS Teams, and if there's going to be a downtime of more than, let's say, 12 hours a day, then the entire day's work has been disrupted, and therefore you have lost 1 day of work, right? So how do you bake in your turnaround time into the SLA of your vendors? Therefore, you have adequate guardrails being set, and therefore you're contractually also safe and secure to that extent. And what are the approvals, additional approvals, and what are the additional client level approvals or customer level approvals that need to be obtained to enable employees to work from anywhere or to work from home? Because if you look at the outsourcing industry itself today, a lot of them work out of offshore secure delivery centers, which are access controlled, where even a pen and paper is not allowed from a confidentiality and a privacy point of view. But how do these all change when you enable a work from home or a work from enable for those many employees? And what does your contractual commitment with your customer say? Is it allowable or not allowable? If it is not allowable, but then how do you, in the current scenario, and even with the retention coming in place, how do you motivate the employee, as well as make your client understand that you have taken up adequate control measures to ensure confidentiality or privacy is not an issue to be looked at, right? And other areas that needs to be looked at is the BCP issues, which we discussed about earlier. The entire BCP program itself will have to be re-looked at, and it has to start from the crisis management program itself. Organizations today need to do a thorough brainstorming of any crisis that they might encounter, and what should be their response time, what should be their level of resilience, how prepared are they, and how are their employees, most importantly, how are their employees trained to respond in such a scenario, and then accordingly put across the business continuity plan, and put across your turnaround times or your RCP and RCT. There are a lot of force major issues that were encountered during the pandemic scenario, because many companies were not able to deliver what was intended to be delivered, or in a timely manner that they had intended to deliver, and therefore many organizations had many customers had put in place a force major or invoke the force major clause, and therefore a lot of them had to either cancel the contract or go back to insurance to get their loss indemnified. But largely, if these are not today addressed significantly in the contractual clauses, tomorrow, the insurance may not work for companies, or even in many cases, the organizations might even shut down and then move forward. Right. And the other important thing is, like, with work from home and work from anywhere coming in, while you might have significant amount of controls in place, you might have significant amount of technology oversight in place. There could still be possible areas where information can be leaked, or information can be you know given to another party who is not intended to receive it, or there could be certain process violations or frauds that might happen. So in all these scenarios, what is the breach notification agreement that you discuss with your customer is also something which is very, very important, because again, this will all have a legal binding at a later point in time, and therefore very important to look at from a contractual point of view. Some examples, where contractually, at various levels, be it your supplier or be it your customer, that organizations will have to today look at is force majeure, notice provisions in terms of breach, disaster recovery and business continuity provisions. What is it for your customer that you will inherit, and therefore you will have to have your BCP or your BCM tailored to address that. Similarly, whatever is yours, whether it is getting extended to your vendor, be it a technology vendor or be it a business process vendor, how do you kind of make it in your BCP program? Again, a limitation of liability: to what extent can you take up indemnification? To what extent can you do away with the liability? And how do you contractually secure yourself on that? Liquidated damages is another area, because there could be certain things beyond which you may not be able to provide efficient service, or provide efficient products, or in any business for that matter. And how does liquidated damages cover in such a scenario? What is the governing law and jurisdiction that apply to you? Because again, when it is work from anywhere today, employees, again, as I had mentioned, might work from a geography that is outside of India also, right? And whereas in your customer's contract, you would have mentioned that all your employees will work within in India and within your control. And the moment they move outside of India and they start working, you may not know, but what could be the legal implication of it, and therefore what should be the governing law and jurisdiction aspects that you will have to look at is one area or example that organizations can think about. What are the termination rights that you will have with either a vendor or with the customer? And are you jeopardized, or will the contract be detrimental to you? And how does it impact your overall performances, as another area to look at? And finally, and most importantly, insurance. If today contractual clauses are not very clearly laid out, tomorrow the insurance provider, service provider might also come back and say that not all of the claim may be allowed, or nothing may be allowed for that matter. And then how do you protect or secure yourself from such a scenario is something that needs to be looked at. Okay. So we looked at the challenges, we looked at the critical risks, and how do we kind of make certain amends in the policy procedure level, at the human resource management level, and again, both from a customer point of view or from a vendor or supplier point of view, from a contractual level, how do we kind of make certain amends so that we try and to a certain level address those challenges and risks. And the other most important aspect to look at is the mindset. The way we were looking at work from home or work from anywhere before the pandemic to what it is today. While there is a certain level of acceptance that has come in, what are still the challenges that that today managers face, and what are the possible ways to overcome those is what we will be looking at. We will again start with a quick poll question. How many days of work from home or work from anywhere would be ideal in a month? That's your personal opinion, but you can share from the options that have been provided here. Either please use the chat box or use the Q&A tab. Okay, many of you are responding between option C and D. I'm interested to see that nobody is saying 0 yet. Okay, 5 to 10 days. That's good. Okay, the majority is going for 5 to 10 days. Again, a mindset change from what it was before. Many organizations, even though they had a policy for work from home, it was often looked at as an a paid holiday that somebody would take when they're saying work from home, right? Okay. Another interesting perspective that I would like to hear from you: productivity of work has increased or decreased during work from home or work from anywhere for that matter? Increased. Okay. There's an interesting put across. Initially decreased, now increased. Decreased. Okay. Many of you are saying increased. While I think one person had mentioned remains the same, and another participant or a few participants had mentioned decreased also. I think it's all of the above. But what I did not put across here is whether the working hours have increased or not, which is in a way this question: work-life balance is best achieved in a work from home environment or not? I mean, after having worked remotely, at least to a certain extent, what would be your response on this? Now it's interesting. So many of you disagree that okay. I think almost unanimous response in terms of work-life balance. I think in India, work-life balance will never improve. Either you are on premises or you are working from home. In hybrid is even worse. This is an interesting question. Do you feel your home environment is equipped to support your work from home or anywhere? Now, give your response from the viewpoint as to whether there is a dedicated space to work with fewer or zero disturbance when you're working, and consider this response even for your subordinates as well. Okay. Okay. When you are saying home environment is equipped. But interestingly, many Indian households were not prepared for this sudden shift to work from home, because in larger cities, especially let's say if you're looking at the younger population, migrating population, who worked out of a PG, or who work out of who are part of a joint family, there were issues with regards to finding a dedicated space with regards to work from home. I think Mr. Syed Sultan has raised his hand. Madan, can you enable cam and remote? Yes, Mr. Syed, I have enabled you to talk. Mr. Syed?
Sir?
Yeah, you had raised your hand. Would you like to share something?
So they are enabled. We are in.
I'm not sure if he had erroneously put it across.
Syed sir, can you talk?
Okay, I think
Yes, sir. Okay.
no problem at all. Okay, yeah. So this work from home or work from anywhere environment today is I would say is still figuring out scenario. It depends on that particular employee, where they come from, and what kind of family background that they are from, and how equipped they are at their houses to have a disturbance-free environment to work, number one. And number two, what kind of other information security related aspects or areas that needs to be looked at. I think this is still figuring, at least from an Indian scenario point of view, this is still a situation which is which is evolving, right? Now talking about some of the mindset issues, both from an employer and employee point of view. I think in a pre-pandemic scenario, again you're bringing in pandemic because pandemic is one key event that has accelerated or made us even think about or pushed us to work from home or work from anywhere, and therefore what was the pre-pandemic mindset? Most importantly, is the trust issue, whether the employee who has availed work from home is really working or not. Or how do I know that the employee is in front of the system all the time doing the job that I have allocated to him or her, and how do I know that it is really happening, or certain client conversations are happening. So these trust issues were there pre-pandemic, and to a certain extent even today, with more and more fraud scenarios coming in, with productivity issues coming in. This is still an issue for managers or employers to cope up with. But pre-pandemic, this was definitely a certain scenario or an issue, right? The general mindset would be that for even larger organizations where they had work from home provision, the first thing that anybody would think is like it is more a paid holiday without even applying for leave that somebody is taking when they're saying work from home. I mean, that's the mindset that people had, which significantly got changed with pandemic scenario, because everybody was then forced to work from home or work from anywhere for that matter, and that's one change. And most importantly, again, existed for many people, it existed only as a policy because there was always a blessing from the manager or from the employer or the partner that was required to avail this particular work from home. And there were so many questions, again because of trust issues that were posted, that many did not avail it also. Again, productivity was one trigger based on which these trust issues or these non-availing had happened, and where many organizations had attendance records as a key measure to performance and output. This became a challenge to kind of track and monitor their attendance. Again, where they were not enabled for any physical presence or virtual presence through today during hybrid, you have people both sitting in person as well as sitting remotely. And even board meetings are happening that way today, right? And we were all not prepared at that point in time for this kind of a scenario, and therefore it posed a challenge, where physical presence was mandatorily required. And from an employee point of view, yeah, as I had mentioned, work from home was always construed as a holiday, at least largely so. And there was some feeling of isolation. Let's say there were scenarios where, for certain specific cases, for medical reasons, some employees would have, obtained this provision and they would have been working. And there was always this feeling of isolation, that HR would normally come back and report to the management that, this particular employee, he or she is feeling left out, or there is not enough communication that happens with somebody who is working from home, primarily because they are working remotely and there is no in-person connection with such a person. And there was always a preference to dedicated workspace. If you're working from office, you have a dedicated workspace, and therefore adequate infrastructure being provided for, which was never a scenario, at least pre-pandemic, when it had come for when it was a work from home related issue. And work-life balance is impacted, but largely, I think a work from home provision in the pre-pandemic mindset was more to address the work-life balance related issue, where few days or once in a month, employees were allowed to work from home, so that they could take care of their personal needs as well as they work for office. And again, because there is lower monitoring, there is a higher level of procrastination or postponement of work, which led to more of stress and low productivity issues, for employees who are working from home. And finally, and most importantly, the amount of stress that women employees had faced, and this is something that we had seen through the pandemic also, because when a woman is at home, the general perception is that her additional home load is also on her, as against the office work that needs to be looked into or completed, and therefore that created an additional stress, especially for women folk. I think pandemic had also increased this. I believe there's some amount of diversity in terms of the sharing of workload on the home front that has happened during pandemic, or to a certain extent post pandemic. But yeah, the women folk did face a little bit of more stress when it was always a work from home, right? And let's quickly look at what are the pros and cons of working from home or working from anywhere. I think the first and the most important thing, and many employees today put it across, or many candidates who come for recruitment put it across as a condition also, that they will continue, or they will continue their interview, or they will consider looking at a position only if they are offered a work from home or a work from anywhere position, right? And this has been a scenario, I think, for many companies, be it practicing chartered accountants, for even companies which were hitherto never ever had a work from home scenario, who had to change or tweak their policy so as to bring in new talent, because business was growing. You needed somebody to kind of do that work. All that the organization had to do was eventually to see whether whether work from home is possible for that particular job or task or not, right? And then accordingly decide whether it is going to be a hybrid model, or it is going to be a complete 100% work from home. Even today, many startups run that way, with 100% work from home or work from anywhere, so that they have that employee retention in place. Of course, they have their own ways of managing their productivity, but the most important factor out here is with talent becoming the most critical resource today. It improves employee retention, and therefore it is to be looked at as something which will stay on for the near and medium future, right? And this will also allow organizations to have an access to a wider pool of applicants. Today, if you are work from home or work from anywhere ready, and if you need a specialist, and that specialist is not out of a particular geography, be a Chennai or a Bangalore, and if you know that this person is sitting out of Jaipur, and if those services can be provided remotely, I think that's a win-win situation, right? And therefore, it kind of expands the pool of resources, that organizations can tap into and accordingly tweak their own policy so as to make it a more win-win situation. Possible productivity gains, again, depends on the way organizations allow people to function on a work from home or work from anywhere scenario. How do they encourage or how do they develop certain mechanisms so as to enable employees to do more focused work? What kind of monitoring levels do they have? If such measures are being put in place, then definitely there's going to be a significant amount of productivity gain. Today, many challenges happen while there are tools to monitor. The challenges or issues come up when there are multiple modes or medium that people use for communication, right? While you have a Teams call running, suddenly somebody from a team member or a manager would call you on phone and then give certain other cross instructions. And all those largely were avoided when it was on premise, where today when you're working from home or working from anywhere, multitasking has become something which is also granted in nature, right? And how do you kind of manage all this and at the same time ensuring productivity is also growing is something that organizations have always found as a challenge. But if they have struck the right balance, I think it's a good area to look at. Again, increased staff motivation with staff having again better work-life balance today. But again, work-life balance is another challenging or threatening issue that work from home suddenly has started posing, right? When people started moving from work from office to work from anywhere or work from home, the first thing that happened was, yes, it's more, you have cut down on the travel time to office, you have cut down significantly on the wait time elsewhere. So therefore there is more allowable time for the employee to work on and then focus on the work that he or she needs to do. But the challenge had come from employees that, because more and more work got assigned, considering that they have more available time, I think work from home eventually had become, an employee available at any time, right? And especially for those professionals who are working with clients across the globe, we have heard complaints that, they wake up with their laptop open and then they go to sleep with their laptop closed, right? So that's the level of pressure that suddenly work from home had created. But if there are policies, procedures to manage the way an employee can work from a work from home or a work from anywhere scenario, I think that work-life balance can also be struck. There can be clear messages today. Organizations are taking measures to ensure that they do not disturb or even send an email to their employees when they are either on a holiday or whether they are in an off time. People smartly block lunchtime when they are working from home also, so that they kind of announce to the or broadcast to their community that they are on a break and therefore they should not be disturbed. So there are ways and means that people actually have tried adopting so as to improve work-life balance. But again, on experiences that with work from home setting, and we did see it in some of the responses that you participants have given also, that it had increased, or the increased stress, the work-life balance has actually gone for a toss to a larger set of people, because there was this mindset also which has been developed that, okay, you're at home, which means you're available at any time to work, right? And financial benefits, significant amount of reduction in overhead costs. But again, as organizations today are coming back to work, I think they are suddenly seeing a spike in rental costs, and they are trying to kind of balance and play around in terms of how do they save on office space versus what kind of hybrid mechanism that they can have. But largely, I think there is a good amount of overhead saving, especially with regards to electricity, with regards to internet connections. While many organizations have started putting across an internet allowance to employees because they use it out of their home bandwidth, still it's a significant reduction from what you take as an enterprise connection or corporate connection. Then you have various other refreshments and other lunch allowances that you would have to provide hitherto if they were working from office, as against a work from anywhere or work from home, which there is a good amount of reduction in cost of savings that will come. Again, any change today, any technological upgrade or any customer preference today is primarily on this one particular factor, convenience. So wherever people find it more convenient, they choose work from home, work from anywhere. There are a lot of people I know that who would prefer to work from office even today. But again, it's all convenience that really matters. And if employees believe that because of this convenience they are able to deliver more, they are able to provide better output. I think that's a win-win situation for employers and employees as well. Again, we discussed about work-life balance. There are a lot of, again, interventions that many companies are doing today on health, mental health, most importantly, and well-being, because during this pandemic, there was also a mental health issue with lockdowns, significant reduction in communication or interpersonal activities among various people. And therefore, organizations had to come out with a policy of well-being and mental health or health overall in general, because they're always sitting sedentary in a particular place and working, and which will also have a significant impact on the productivity of that particular employee. Again, if organizations have adequate policies, procedures around this, I think it's a win-win situation. Now, let's look at some of the drawbacks. While we discussed some of the drawbacks in the earlier slide as well, I think the most important the challenging scenario for any manager or an employer would be to monitor the performance of that particular employee. In many a scenario, output will come. In many a scenario, let's say if you're expecting your professional or your resource to remote audits, for example, you may not be 100% sure as to whether they would have done or performed adequate audit, because in the first place, doing a remote audit in itself is new for both the client and for the auditor. And what kind of guardrails or control measures that we have had in probably evaluating a particular information that was shared by the client, what kind of relevant questions that have been asked for, if you were not part of that particular meeting, if it's a virtual meeting. So therefore, there are a lot of performance related aspects that kick in when it comes to remote working. And what levels of distraction that the employee will have. Are they very systematic in terms of maintaining minutes of meeting, that they record a document for every meeting that they have with the clients or with any team members? So what are all the measures that you have to monitor or track productivity? Large organizations today have deployed productivity tools or engines which will track what are the number of screens, or what is the number of breaks that an employee is taking, the number of screens that they are switching over to during the time that they work, which also has a detrimental effect that the employee today complains that I do not want to be micromanaged or looked down upon to that level, so as to monitor my performance. So somewhere there needs to be a balance which needs to be struck. But again, owing to a lot of trust issues and the level of the quality of the work that is being performed, there was always a performance related aspect or productivity related aspects that will be a big question mark when it comes to work from home or remote working. But how organizations are innovatively and creatively working this out, striking a balance, at the same time not losing employee morale, is where this becomes a success. I know the CA Institute has also recently put up a digital assurance standard primarily to provide those guardrails or guidance in terms of performing remote audits. What are the digital remote audits? What are the control mechanisms that you need to have? What are the checking mechanisms that you need to have? So there are also regulatory frameworks that are coming through. But having said that, while this is going to be certain that remote working is here to stay, how do we kind of work this around and manage it in a more efficient way is all what it is about. Again, cost of working from home is another key aspect that the employees later have come back with, because while the offices have cut down on electricity, there are specific, let's say if the employee is working out of a tropical climate, the use of AC is much higher. A dedicated room and therefore a dedicated set of computer systems running, and therefore that's increasing the electricity bill, the internet bandwidth cost, the health and safety related costs that the organization will have to incur to kind of engage the employee and then keep the employee hale and healthy so that the productivity is not going for a toss. So all these will eventually increase the cost for the employer, because it's not that just because the employee has opted to work from home, there are certain costs that the employee is going to bear on behalf of the organization to a certain extent, right? So that is going to increase the cost, while it may not significantly increase it to the level of where you are managing it internally, as an in-office or an on-premise setup. It will still have to be looked at and monitored in terms of what are the different kinds of costs that the employees are incurring, that they are bringing it back to the company, how much of it is allowable, what kind of policy procedures that you will have to put against these are something that needs to be looked at. And the other important aspect is again, it has been a plethora of edtech tools, edtech portals that have come up during this pandemic period, because everybody was sitting at home. Education in general had come to a standstill, and therefore people were expected to learn out of their mobile phones or computers, and therefore organizations also use this as a tool to upgrade or upskill their employees. But in many a scenario when similar like this in a webinar, while the instructor is talking, the level of reach that a particular program has on that particular individual or participant is always a debatable point, right? While you might have these questions even in an in-person setup also, for the organization, what needs to be achieved is to ensure that they learn new stuff, they understand newer ways of working, and therefore they upskill or upgrade these employees for newer ways of working. But have the objective been achieved, right? And how do they track or monitor those aspects? And especially with regards to the student community today, a lot of them know different ways and means to kind of bypass the way controls, right? If you ask them to write an exam today, even after so many e-learnings happening, there are still ways and means, despite many proctoring programs available, ways and means to kind of cheat and then work out answers, and therefore the ultimate objective of that learning is not achieved, and therefore it also has a significant impact on staff development also. So how do you kind of again balance it out and put in a better way and ways and means to achieve learning objectives when you're doing it remotely? And information security risk, again, this is something which is basic for any employer, any organization, and it increases multifold depending on the customer sensitivity or sensibility of the information that you handle, right? And how prepared is the organization? What kind of control measures that somebody has? And if you have, let's say, for example, if there is a bring your own device policy, because the organization was not able to procure all the required laptops, and you allow the employees to use their own laptop devices or desktop devices to perform office work, there could be a lot of compromises around information security, the way they deal with company related information. What kind of control measures do you have? What kind of protection or container mechanism do you have? In many scenarios, especially for people who are always on the go mobile, and who are also, like, especially senior executives, who do most of their business on mobile phones. How do you ensure that all of the company information is secure? That they are not, if somebody can, let's say, from an email of the company that has come through, and with an attachment, let's say a certain bank statement of some customers, or the customer is sharing some information to the auditor through his email, and that is configured on the mobile. If the auditor is able to pick that up and put it on a WhatsApp group internally amongst the teams, it's shared and it's on the public domain again, right? So what kind of control mechanisms will organizations have to have, especially with this? I think there is a good amount of risk assessment that needs to be performed in such a scenario to understand specifically what are the different means, different channels through which information leakage can happen, data confidentiality can be compromised, and therefore that will be detrimental to the organization as well as the customer. And increased telecommunication costs, we did discuss this. But I think largely, as I had mentioned, even beyond, let's say, an MS Teams call or a Zoom call, the use of mobile phones today has increased because in an office where a manager will just walk down to an employee and then, chat about the particular work or discuss or converse, is today more on mobile. They don't set up today, at least in the Indian scenario, not everybody is very systematic. They don't set up a Teams meeting and then go ahead and then do a discussion on work, right? So it's mobile phones. So there are multiple modes and means through which communication happens, and therefore there is a cost escalation on each of these fronts. And how do organizations actually, try to balance it out is a key question to look at. And the same thing can be a challenge also, because you have different communication modes, different communication means, which actually perplexes the receiver or the employee. While, as I had mentioned earlier, while there is a Teams call which is running, the manager will do a phone call, and then there will be some other instruction going on. Multitasking becomes a challenge, and also because they do not interact interpersonally with other people, the feeling of isolation is also much higher, right? And mostly when the manager calls or manager talks, or the employee calls or talks, it's largely work related, and therefore that personal touch is somewhere, and largely that's what people have responded in various surveys, that this is one of the drawbacks of remote working, where they lose that interpersonal touch, and then therefore that personal connect is gone. It's all about work, and the call ends the time the work instruction completes, and therefore there is some amount of isolation which sets in or which kicks in, right? And which again leads to a decreased staff morale. There is no team spirit which will come through. Especially over the last 2 years, many new joiners to an organization, be it lateral entries or freshers who have just come out of college, they actually do not know who their team members are. And many times I have seen in my own team that, whom we would have interviewed over a Zoom call or a Teams call, when I see them in person, I will not be able to recognize whether it's the same person that I have after 6 months, that they had joined. Till such time, we would have been remotely working, interacting, but the physical appearance and the interaction is completely different to that, right? And this also brings down a good amount of team spirit. But today, organizations are trying creative and innovative ways to try and beat this out. But given that we are moving out of this pandemic scenario, and there is still a lot of connect that can be enabled, I think on a periodic basis, at least, even though you have a work from anywhere or a work from home policy, on a periodic basis, teams meeting together will generally uplift the mood of the team, and then the team spirit also goes up. And finally, and most important, not all jobs suit home working. It is for the organization and the HR department to very clearly determine what are those areas, what are those jobs that are relevant for home working. And when they are doing that, they should also very clearly understand how many of it can be 100% remote working or 100% working from anywhere, and what can go in as a hybrid model, right? And again, today, organizations just do not have employees alone. They have contractors who work with them, freelancers who work with them. What should be the model for such a scenario? And what will my customer contract mandate is even though a particular job may be suitable for working from home or remote working, but does my customer contract mandate me to stay in a secured work environment and work from over there? Then it does not enable the organization to put such jobs to a work from home or work from anywhere scenario. Again, as we were discussing earlier, these are very key or important matters or aspects that needs to be looked at when considering remote working or working from anywhere. But what is to be kept in mind is that this aspect is going to stay. Definitely, it's going to be a hybrid way of working, and a significant amount of remote working is already happening. How do we manage to get the best of productivity, best of outcome, is what this is all about. Some considerations, both from an employer and employee point of view. We discussed some of these in the earlier slides as well, but we thought we will put it as certain key bullet points so that it is for the participants' consumption. When an employer is looking at remote working, I think it is essential. We just discussed it is essential to understand the job, the nature of work that needs to be done. Who has to do to a certain extent. Certain companies look at gender-related aspects also when considering these matters, so as to ensure that whether a particular job or a skill set is suitable for work from home or not. Largely today, organizations have done a hybrid of this also. While the particular task may be more of a work from home suitable task. But because the team mix is in such a way that you have 30–40% of new joiners or freshers who are working in the team, it is always better to have a hybrid way of working rather than complete or 100% work from home, so that the freshers and new joiners are oriented effectively and being looked at. Just a moment. I think Mr. Suresh has raised his hand. I'll allow him to talk. Yes, Mr. Suresh. Hello. Mr. Suresh Magundappa. I think you've raised your hand, sir. Okay, maybe my mistake, or he's not able to hear me out. I'm sorry. Yeah. So the next other employee consideration is the legal requirement. Again, legal requirement across multiple areas, be it from a customer contract point of view, be it from a supplier contract point of view, be it vendor or service provider point of view, and from a labor law or human resources point of view as well. Today, when let's say, for example, you have the Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act, which the organization would have put across a policy procedure to follow, and the way the redressal mechanism is being defined, the way the reporting mechanism is being defined. But how do these all would have been put across keeping an office environment, workplace in mind. But in a remote working scenario, how does this really shape up, right? And if a woman employee or any employee for that matter is filing a case within the Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act to the employer, even from a remote working scenario, so what are the possible circumstances or scenarios that it could arise for such a scenario? How does the employer put across a process to handle or manage those? These are finer aspects that any organization will have to look at, any employer will have to look at, because as you kind of expand your work area, the amount of risks, the amount of obligations that the organizations will have to go through is also significantly different. When you have an office premise, the basic thing that anybody would look at is the Shop and Establishment Act, and then whether it is a compliance or not. But then the moment you move into a remote working environment, there are a lot of finer legal aspects that organizations will have to think about and look through, so that there is, number one, no deviation or non-compliance, and number two, whether the intended objectives are achieved, right? And the third and another key consideration is around providing appropriate infrastructure and equipment. Again, as I had mentioned, your organization may choose to allow employees to bring their own device, BYOD, bring your own device kind of a setup. But does it really help in information security related areas, or any data leakage, or any cybersecurity related areas? Because they might handle data which could mix up with their personal information in their personal laptop, and the security profile of that particular device could be significantly low. The mobile device that they may use may not be well contained from any further attacks, and therefore whether you have determined as an employer what should be the appropriate equipment that employees can use in their remote working scenario. Fourth, and the most important, is that is something that organizations, leaders and managers have been taught during the pandemic: communicate. In a general office scenario, an adequate level of communication will be emphasized, whereas in a remote working scenario, what is more important is over communication, right? It helps the employee understand that there is a communication channel which is always functioning. There is no feeling of isolation that comes through, and you get the employee to focus by over communicating also in many of the times, right? And train and monitor employees. Again, training is again a very key aspect when it comes to remote. But today with hybrid, I think some amount of training can happen physically. I think that should be increased, and monitoring the way certain companies monitor are using certain proctoring tools. It could be a simple periodic stand-up checks, be it a Teams meeting or even a phone call that you can have with employee at various points in time during the day, so that you have a track of what the employees are up to, right? And while doing all of this, again, the entire health and safety ambit or gamut changes when it comes to remote working. Now, again, with more of environment, social, and governance related compliances with related frameworks kicking in and India also being a signatory to the COP, organizations are today expected to maintain a certain level of health and safety, occupational health and safety related compliances. And this again will undergo a significant change when it comes to remote working. And there could be mental health related defects. There could be physical health because of sedentary working, work-life balance related issues, safety related issues that organizations will have to take cognizance of and draw their own boundaries as to where is it that they can step in and where they cannot. And to the extent that they can step in, what kind of intervention mechanism and measures that they will have to have is something which is very, very critical for them to look at. And this also, helps employees feel a sense of belongingness with the organization. As also, it's a win-win situation for the organization that if the employee's morale is boosted, then your productivity and your outcome is much better. And again, as we discussed earlier, information security is something which is very basic for any organizations. Employee considerations, again, very important. Again, with a mindset change, employees also have been complaining that work from home has increased their workload significantly, because the organization always considers them as available at any point in time, because they have a laptop or a desktop at home, connectivity at home 24/7, and therefore they should be available 24/7. And especially for those who work across time zones, who work across geographies, and with various clients also. So this has been an unwritten rule that many employees were expected to work. But again, it is for the employee to also be very clear with their employer to determine what will be their working hours, what would be their break time, and if there's going to be an extra work time or an overtime that is required, how do you clearly agree between each other, and how does it bake into your overall plan on a daily basis or on a weekly basis. And for the employee, again, the most important is to find a proper and quiet workplace. Now, this will become a challenge. While they might find a dedicated workspace in their homes, this will become a challenge when the entire household is working from home. And I think we need to factor that in, because today the husband and the wife and the kids will also at some point in time do remote studies from home, and therefore the availability of dedicated space then comes into question. So it is for the employee to determine very clearly as to the number of days that they're going to work from home, and for those number of days whether they are going to have a dedicated workspace or not. And if that's not going to be a guaranteed or a given area, and if there's going to be client interaction, if there's going to be team meetings, or a certain amount of focused work that needs to be performed, I don't think remote working will help in such a scenario. Again, similarly, distractions are going to pile up, and therefore will have an impact on the productivity. Taking breaks, again, this is something that normally we tell for people who are working from office as well, but much more when it's at home, because in many scenarios they get all that they want at their desk when they're working from home, because the mother would make something and then keep sending them, giving them, but without a break, if they're continuing to do so, I think it's going to take a toll on their health, and then the employees will have to determine adequate breaks in their day-to-day work. And most importantly, use the right technology. How do I know what is the right technology? It is for the employee to figure out. Most importantly, as to there could be certain meetings which will work well if it is a Teams call or a Zoom call or a Google call, but there could be certain things which work much better, on a phone call or a mobile call, right? So it is for the employee to determine, what is the kind of work area that they're going to focus on or participate in, and what will be the right technology to use, so that they do not waste much of time, in distractions and other areas by using these technologies, and focus on the output alone. Then most importantly, again, when we started taking a glance at what pandemic has uh, thrown us at, thrown at us, and what is it that has changed significantly. I think the one thing that is significantly gained, or significantly exponentially grown, is technology, right? And how do we choose the right amount of technology, and how can technology help in enabling this remote working and making it a success, is where all the matter lies. So it is dependent on whether you are working on different time zones in different places, and therefore the appropriate technology would be, ideally would be, an email communication, right? Because there's not going to be a one-to-one in-person real-time communication that's going to happen, unless otherwise it is mandated, where you are going to have a cross-country or a cross-time zone client pitch meeting, or a procurement meeting that's going to happen. In all other cases, I think the good way to communicate is the email communication, right? We need not burden ourselves with any meeting set up at 10:30 in the night or 6:30 a.m. in the morning for Japan, and then wait for the employees for them to come in, the counterparts to come in, and then start talking, right? Where if it can be addressed over an email, I think that's the best way to go about it, right? Real time video conferencing, instant messaging in many scenarios. You need not even make a call, just do a chat on Teams or a Skype, or any other communication tool that the organization has. If it's just going to be one question or other stuff, I think instead of making a call, burdening yourself, getting the radiation heat on your ears, I think it's much better to communicate over a chat. And again, the context with which you're going to communicate, the duration and the importance of that determines what kind of technology an employee or an employer is choosing to use. Different time, same place. Again, there are co-working spaces. When I'm talking co-working spaces, I'm not talking about physical co-working spaces. I'm talking about virtual spaces, like where people create repositories of the work that they do, and the team members keep adding on. There are a lot of such tools available even within Microsoft Office. Zoom also has a whiteboard. Where you can do something, save it for somebody else to come and see, and then they can add in their views, they can add in their comments, so that even though they come in at different times, you can still communicate with each other, rather than waiting for them to come meet and then move forward, right? And if you're at the same place, same time, the best is to have a face-to-face connect, rather than having Teams connect. On a lighter side, I've seen many people, once they were back to office, still using, even to, connect with their colleagues just across the table. At least for the sake of it, they will use a Teams call to do that, right? And I think when you're in office, the most and the best is to have a face-to-face meeting, and in-person conversation, which is more effective and more productive, right? Anytime, any place. Again, you have mobile phones. Again, it is for the employee and the employer to determine which is the most effective way of communicating, and accordingly choose what has to be done. Just a quick, I thought we will put across, a simple backgrounder in terms of, what are the different communications that can be used. Okay, some key points for employers or for managers to look at, when it comes to remote working. And I mean, this is more from a leadership point of view. So I think this is even true, setting up a team purpose and clarity on roles. This is even true in and work from in a work from office scenario. But most importantly, I think this is very, very important, when you have remote working scenarios. The clarity of roles, the clarity of the task which each and every employee will have to perform, I think is very, very important. And that needs to be determined by the organization very clearly and well in advance. Establish a new rhythm. Again, the way of working, and especially with hybrid, this rhythm is going to be a significant challenge, because what you used to command and communicate in a physical environment or in a completely virtual environment is going to undergo change, because few of your employees are going to be there in front of you. Few of your employees from whom you will need to coordinate and get the work done are going to be remotely working. How do you get them all together? How do you establish that rhythm? I think is the most challenging task in the upcoming years for organizations, because it's going to be a hybrid way of working, right? It's not going to be, it's not going to be just a completely remote working or a completely, in office working. Tracking capacity and progress. Again, this needs to be looked at with certain amount of sensibility also, because certain employees, especially tenured employees in an organization, look at regular monitoring as micromanagement, and then they may snap off. But at the same time, if you have more and more freshers and new joiners in your team, I think frequent communication with them, frequent stand-ins, a check-in time with them to understand what they are working, how they are working, is very, very essential to also monitor and track the work that they are doing, right? And most importantly, a regular team meet, be it virtual, be it physical, or be it hybrid, I think should be encouraged, so that you ensure that goals or tasks are clearly defined, objectives are clearly defined at a short term, and therefore track for performance and completion. Again, we looked at it earlier. Leverage technology to collaborate. What is the right technology that you're going to use? If you're going to do a hybrid, then you're going to ideally block a conference room or a cabin with the technology support to bring certain people on remote with virtual connectivity also. And how if you're going to be 100% virtual, then what kind of tool that you're going to use is going to determine how you're going to work across, right? But this is again very, very important, because today collaboration is happening in a very hybrid manner. You will have cross-cultural teams working with you. The way they work, the way you understand each other will all undergo a change if the moment we move hybrid and remote. And priorities also change for people, right? When somebody works remotely, they would have chosen a remote working to achieve certain personal tasks also at home, and then take up their work at a later point in time. Let's say it could be for the first half of the day, they will be doing some personal stuff, and then from 2 o'clock till night 10 or 11, they might do. Which means you need to also work with that rhythm. You need to also understand what each one of your team members are using this work from home or remote working for, and probably stitch together. It's going to be a difficult task, no doubt about it. But then how effectively we are doing is what it is all about. And as employers, as leaders and managers, I think it is very, very important to make yourself visible and to make yourself available. Otherwise, both from a productivity point of view, as well as from a feel of isolation point of view, employees are at loss, right? So how do you do it is to kind of have a frequent communication, one-on-one communication also with team members, with immediate reporting managers on a regular basis, on a daily basis, will help ensure that you are visible, you are available for any support, you are available for any needs that the employees might have. As also, it will help you to monitor or track your employees' performance in a very more effective way. And as I had mentioned earlier, when it comes to virtual or hybrid, the mantra is to over communicate. Because the more you communicate, the more we will be able to bring in focus. Because in a remote working scenario, the chances of distraction are much, much higher as against the chances of distraction in an office environment. And therefore, this level of communication is always required to bring that focus of the employees to work in a very determined manner. Also, as while micromanagement could be one pitfall when we are either tracking more too frequently or at a very granular level. I think a certain level of empowerment to some of your managers who are managing multiple sets of people, some level of self-reporting or self-compliance will help promote and boost employees' morale, as well as them shaping up as a leader themselves. So tomorrow, the one big challenge that we will have with hybrid or remote working is that as people grow up in their career, how many of them really catch hold of or take up leadership skills is going to become a question. But I think as humans, we have all evolved so effectively over so many thousands of years. I think the human evolution process will help leaders to new leaders to develop in their own ways. But again, how much of empowerment and support as a manager or as an employer that you can provide your employee, so that they start managing themselves, they start managing the team more effectively, and they turn into a leader themselves, is again, which is very, very important. And last but not least, most importantly, we need to ensure the well-being of the employees. Remote working is a very, very tricky situation. It could make people overwork. It could make people entirely not work at all. But how do we effectively manage this, but at the same time not impacting their mental health, not impacting their physical health and their well-being is something which is very, very important. Encourage well-being sessions, encourage health-related counseling within the organization, so that this is being recognized and considered, and the employees also know that there is an output mechanism for any of these issues or challenges that they might face, as against any office way of working which can be addressed when we are meeting in person. This is something that, because of the physical dislocation, many managers or many employers may not even notice. But creating a mechanism around the well-being, I think, is something which is very, very important, which the pandemic has also taught us in a large way. Okay, and with this, we will move on to the last section, and after which I will open a 10-minute of Q&A. While we have looked at all of this, and then businesses are in the recovery mode, let us quickly look at what kind of recovery organizations are moving into, what is going to stay, and how are we going to evolve ourselves into. And before that, a quick round of poll questions. How long did it take for you to implement work from home or anywhere? Okay, very good. Somebody has given an honest answer of not yet completely implemented. Okay. Okay. Many of you have not yet implemented. Some of you have instantaneously implemented. I think it depends on the readiness of you or your organization in that matter. Do you feel that information security risks will increase multifold in remote working environment? Okay, good. I think we have a fairly unanimous answer out here. Yeah, interesting question again. Customer and employee mindset will undergo a significant change when resuming normal work. Would like to see your perspectives on the chat box, please. Sorry. Okay, many of you are saying partial changes will happen, but still people will move back to old practices. Yeah. Some of you are answering A, organizations will push for change and encourage new models, which is true in many scenarios. Yeah, Mr. Harish Kumar has raised his hand. Let me just allow him to talk. I think he has not raised his hand again. Okay. Okay, a quick summary in terms of the recovery process altogether. I will not take much time on this particular slide. I think one thing that is very certain is that this pandemic has ensured that there is a shift in mindset, especially with regards to working from anywhere. What was largely not acceptable in the pre-pandemic scenario, at least beyond the technology sector, today is fairly acceptable largely. Maybe manufacturing, due to its own restrictions and constraints, may not 100% move to a remote working kind of a scenario. But again, there are tasks, there are job areas within the manufacturing setup where you can still do a remote working or a work from home kind of an environment. So therefore, what this has enabled is a shift in mindset. The trust factors have changed. People have learned, even though there could be challenges as we implement this, people have learned different ways to work around, get the best productivity or output, which we did also notice in some of the responses that you had given for the productivity related question. That this is something that has become an acceptable factor, right? It is not looked at like something where an employee will choose this to use it as a holiday, or an employee will choose this to kind of reduce the workload sitting out of office. But yes, organizations have recognized the need for it, both from a financial cost point of view, as well as from most importantly from a talent reflection point of view, right? And the other important aspect that this pandemic has also looked at or taught us about is there's going to be uncertainty that's going to come up immediately. As the pandemic was easing out, we had the war in Ukraine coming up, which did impact a significant amount of supply chain related aspects. Oil and gas procurement took a hit, and therefore global economy had to reel under some amount of pressure. Then subsequently, the China pandemic related issue, because of a sudden open of or removal of lockdown, disrupted some amount of supply chain in the market, and therefore uncertainties is something that organizations have agreed that is going to happen, and how well are they prepared to manage this also tells them how resilient they are. And therefore crisis management in organizations today have become a key factor to look at, right? Maybe at a as we progress, the auditor will also be expected to report on the preparedness around crisis for any organization that they are looking at or auditing, at least beyond a certain level of turnover threshold. If they are systemically important to the country, then I think it makes more sense to see if they are crisis ready, right? I think that's something that which is significantly changed today. Also, most important is that the way we work, the rules of works have changed, the roles have changed, and many layers have been removed, new layers have been built in. So the expectations of businesses have changed. So largely, there is a significant amount of preparedness emphasis that has happened today, right? And as I had mentioned earlier, healthcare and safety has also become of paramount importance. Be the normal citizen as such for our governments or for their own employees, for organizations, healthcare and safety has become, and organizations today are also rated the way they take care of their employees, right? And today, if you look at how the recovery, and that's why the third column that we are going to see here is clearly talking about some of the drivers today are going to be around the financial metrics, whether it makes economic sense for me to continue the business the way it was before, be it any crisis, the pandemic or the war that we are currently happening, or any other new healthcare threat or business threat that will come up, whether it makes economic sense to continue the way the organization has been continuing, whether working from physical space, whichever kind of job or task that is it safe in the first place, and that will determine the level of the societal needs are being safeguarded, and that's the emotional portion of it. And eventually bridging all this is the digital parameter that will come through, right? And that is the enabler in a significant sense, I should say. Enabling many of these aspects to significantly move towards a remote working economy or a remote economy for that matter, and for organizations to also choose what is it that they will have to quickly move into virtual. Right? We'll quickly also move on to the final slide, and what will be the future of workforce. And I think what is more important is to acknowledge and recognize that the HR function will also have to be significantly digitized, because earlier what used to be a labor department, or where it was more of one-on-one connects that the HR function had with the employees, is today more of digital in nature. And therefore, people's experience have changed in terms of connecting with their managers, employers, as well as HR, right? So all the digital tools that we are looking at today should be, looking at that employee experience and what level of usage, what level of collaboration, what level of communication that these digital tools or assets are helping in this particular process, and what kind of an agile organization that the company is able to build. When I'm saying an agile organization, it's going to be a hybrid kind of an organization, where it's going to be part physical, part remote, and there could be certain jobs which will be hybrid, where you will require both physical as well as remote kind of a setup. Coming in, even if you look at medicine, with a lot of technological advancements and telemedicine, you could perform remote robotic surgeries also, right? So what kind of an agile organization are you going to build so as to help in your achievement of this particular objective, and what kind of digitalization of the HR function itself is going to happen, that will enable collaboration, that will enable communication between various employees within the organization, and most importantly, the leadership and manager maturity to appreciate these new ways of working, and better ways of engaging with employees, right? And again, as we had seen earlier, this is an employee engagement factor, employee retention factor today. In many organizations today, if you're not going to offer even a hybrid way of working, if not 100% remote working, then I don't think we will be able to tap a significant amount of talent. While larger organizations have taken certain calls that they will bring back 100% of all the employees back, I think still there are organizations which are trying to grapple with talent loss, grapple with people being available but not in their own location, and therefore they can be enabled to work remotely. I think all these levels of maturity and mindset change is something which is required for organizations to tap into these areas, but with adequate guardrails, be it the challenges or risks that we looked at, be it the emotional aspects, the healthcare related or well-being related aspects that we looked at, to ensure that there is a smooth transition to a virtual or a hybrid way of work. And finally, before I kind of close, I think I will sign off with this particular statement from John Donne in his book, where he had mentioned that no man is an island. Right? Literally, he means that nobody is self-sufficient individually, independently, and therefore there is a good amount of collaboration by whatever means is required, that needs to be enabled, that needs to be empowered, and therefore we as a larger human community, try to achieve the best benefits for all of us together, right? And with this, I will take a quick pause for any questions from the participants. Any questions, you can put it on the Q&A box. Or you can raise your hand and we will enable you to ask your questions in person, or you can type it in the chat box also. How to see the whole seminar after this session? I think this question is for SIRC of ICAI. I'm sure they'll be able to respond to you separately on this. There's a recording I know that they have taken. Maybe they will upload it in one of the portals. Small individual practitioners is a challenge. Yes, I agree. But I think if to a certain extent we are able to do it in a very hybrid manner, and I think it will work. Yeah. Any suggested good software for CA office for automation of all kind of works? There are many automation softwares available, but maybe I will ask Rekha to probably later share some details with you, because the institute is also recommending some amount of office automation software for practicing chartered accountants. What, according to you, is the level of WFH taking place with the advent of 5G technology, etc.? So 5G technology largely enables IoT, or what we call as Internet of Things, because it provides a larger bandwidth, and therefore it enables seamless communication between multiple devices, right? With regards to work from home or working from anywhere, if there could be sensor-based communication that the employee can enable from his home itself, and therefore perform some of his tasks for which he is required physically at office, I think that can work. But otherwise, the same rules and principles apply with any other technology. 5G, I don't think generally will increase work from home or work from anywhere, but it reduces a good amount of human-to-human communication or man-to-machine communication, because machine-to-machine communication is largely enabled with 5G with larger bandwidth. Rekha, I think I will hand it over to you. We are dot at 7 o'clock.
So thank you, sir. Thank you for accepting our invitation and conducted the online program. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. And thanks for all the participants
Thank you.
for being patient listeners. Thank you very much.